Welcome to another This Week in Coworking discussion.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the This Week in Coworking podcast feed. I'm your host, Hector Kolonas, and this is the weekly recap for week 17 of 2026. I'm joined today by an amazing guest co-host, no stranger to the show, James Shannon. James, how are you today?
Hi everyone. Great, thank you Hector. Thanks for having me. Obviously I recovered from a great week at GC last week where we had a lot of fun and did a lot of business and met a lot of good friends and customers and partners in the industry.
I remember playing quite a few rounds of table tennis with you, or ping pong as they call it here, and running around the table a bunch, which wasn't the main function, but definitely a core memory when it comes to co-working conferences. But at the conference, we also did something else together, right? We recorded a little bit of a demo, sharing some of the updates or improvements you made to the elumo product. Do you want to just quickly run through what those are so that people can go and look for the video about, or to go and watch the demo that we recorded?
So obviously the live demo is there and people should go and watch that. But yeah, in terms of what we were really focused on last week and launching or announcing was really, what's really fun about product development is getting a product out in the market and then seeing and getting that feedback over the first 6 months or so. So we really listened to the customers over the first 6 months, the early adopters who deployed it, getting great feedback. But there were three key things we learned from that process that we really feel can accelerate and scale the product and make it easier for customers to onboard and to deploy. And that the first of those was, at the end of the day, we're about monetizing bookable space, meeting room space. And we've got a very easy product to install. We work with all the platform we've already got. But at the end of the day, you somehow got to lock the door. And people either already have mag locks or strikes or something on their meeting room door, very easy for us to work with. But more often than not, people have to retrofit a door that doesn't have a lock. And we wanted to make that easier for customers. So we launched our very own wireless handle, which is a great product. We partnered with a subsidiary of Upline in Germany to manufacture it. Already shipped millions of them over the last decade or so. But what's unique about this is we're running our own firmware on it, which allows us to maintain that sub-half second book, charge, and open experience that Illumina created, but now make it a simple 5-minute retrofit with a screwdriver. So no longer a specialist locksmith, installer, mag locks, wiring, all of that. Just a simple swap the handle on the door, and now you're enabled for Illumina. So the wireless lock was one of the big things we've been working on, and we had great customer feedback last week, those who came and saw it at the show. The second one was, I guess, more commercial, and that was a lot of the access industry, and particularly those sort of big tech that are driving the wallet-based access industry. All the pricing has always been per user, and therefore all the tech vendors generally build their pricing models on the big tech vendors that are passing that through, which is what we did initially. But we've kind of learned that that's a hard model, even though it's quite popular in more sort of agentic and consumption sort of models kind of post SaaS. We really wanted to optimize this for what our customers wanted to do. And we're all about monetizing space on meeting rooms. So let's make it a per room cost. And so we generally moved away from a per user pricing now to a standard fixed cost, simple subscription per month per room. Customers I was talking to last week realized that they're only going to sell one more hour of meeting space a month in that room, and Illumina's already paid for itself. In reality, they're probably going to uplift from 10 to 20% revenue capture to 70, 80% capture. But mentally, paying for Illumina in that first hour a month kind of makes it a no-brainer. So we really wanted to simplify it rather than have to do ROI spreadsheets. So it takes the users out of it as well, which is obviously with churn and with lots of moves out and changes in flex, is always a hard variable to work with.
Yeah.
And the final one really was, again, to remove friction. We've historically had a booking platform and mobile app and made those offer available to Illumina customers at launch. But the real feedback we got from everyone was that we've already got platforms in place, doing our booking, doing our billing. And actually the big message was we really want to get hold of this, to capture this extra revenue from meeting rooms, but it's also time to revenue. And so, and if there's time for integration and there's time to do all that, then that's all time too, and that's all revenue too. So removing time to integration, working with what the customer already has out of the box is our sort of third thing we've been focusing on. So as well as our initial OfficeRnD integration, we're now rapidly rolling out other integrations with Yardi and Nexudus and others, so that pretty much any customer that comes to us with Illumina who's working with any of the top 5 platforms can just deploy Illumina and it works with what they've already got.
That's awesome. And the demo, it does highlight just how simple and easy and intuitive the actual hardware device is. So folks who have listened this far ahead and they're like, hold on, what is Illumo for folks who maybe haven't had the opportunity to see it in real life?
Yeah, so Ascentis, we've, for over a decade, we've historically delivered, automated IT, including networking and onboarding and digital experience, as well as, driving, insights from, Wi-Fi data and so on. But Illumo really was identifying a problem post-pandemic, which was the most in-demand spaces in Flex were the bookable spaces, the meeting rooms, the shared spaces. But they were being monetized the least, not because they weren't popular, but because it was hard to capture that revenue. Because customers are either choosing revenue and putting locks in the door, but they were sacrificing experience. Or they were choosing experience and having a meeting room tablet, but no locks. And the problem there is, in both cases, you lose. You either lose revenue or you have unhappy members who can't get in a room when they want to, who are having to kick someone out, who's sitting in a room they booked. And so we wanted to fix that with Illumo. And really, the only way to do that, we discovered, was not to piece together existing access and booking systems and so on. It was really to build an end-to-end system that could just sit behind what customers have got already and create that experience at the door. Because anyone can control access to a door on a pre-booking, but it's that split second, I'm on a call, I see an empty room, I want to get in it right now.
Yep.
That tap to book, charge, and open in a half a second, that similar experience to, the subway or buying a sandwich or whatever. We're all familiar with doing it with Apple and Google Wallet.
Yeah.
It suddenly removes that friction. And for me, the best tech is tech that removes friction, particularly in Flex. And so hopefully it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Operators are now capturing more of their revenue, which is the white space. If all their offices are occupied, bookable spaces where they're going to grow their revenue, and members are happier, which means that they're going to retain those members, and those members are having a great experience.
Yep. And you brought up a very interesting point that I want to just elaborate on for operators who are like, well, we don't charge our members by the hour for meeting rooms. We give them credits.
Right.
We give them access tokens. We give them some form of non-monetary use that is used to kind of police fair use policies and kind of upsell customers later.
It's just another payment. So we see ourselves as really, I guess, an extension of that democratization. So if people are already using credits and those credits are already being deployed in that backend system that's controlling booking and billing and so on, then we will enforce those credits at the door, which actually ensures that it's a fair usage of the space by everyone, rather than a lot of spaces we're seeing people have their credits, but they don't use them because they just sit in the rooms anyway.
Yeah.
And actually for operators who are in the credit system, hardly any of the operators we've spoken to who have deployed credits ever saw any overages. Whereas actually we feel that overages will start to happen now, which will grow revenue beyond what it is today. And that's the whole aim.
Yeah, it also kind of removes another to-do list item for community managers having to walk around the space and being like, have you checked in?
Community managers hate being police, right? They hate telling people off and then put them on the naughty step. It's not what they're there for. They're there to give the grand members a great experience, not to tell them off, make them feel like school children. None of us enjoy that from either side. So let's just democratize it and make it fair to use and easy to use for everyone.
So what I'm going to do is let's jump into some of the other links that we had in the newsletter this week.
Yeah.
For folks listening in, we're going to dive into kind of some design ideas for spaces, creating we versus me spaces. We're going to dig into a whole bunch of AI topics really quickly because we could do a whole podcast on just AI for co-working. I'm going to talk about unbundling of Office and kind of how that relates to fax machines. And we're also going to talk about how some of the new age of operators and co-working leaders are actually coming from outside the industry. So I actually want to start at that point with you, James. Obviously, you didn't wake up as a kid and be like, I'm going to go build technology in co-working spaces. You came from another industry before. The link that is in the newsletter this week, if you go to thisweekincoworking.com and click on week 17, the one we're talking about is from Gaia over at Bottle Rocket Search. And she did a bit of a deep dive into the fact that many of the operators and leaders that we see have come from outside the industry. But James, bring it to you. You obviously, Illumo is a project you're very passionate about. I think you led it from inception, but you also saw the problem because you came from outside the co-working world. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of sort of obvious views here. I mean, I've obviously historically have an engineering background, so I used to build apps, build hardware, firmware, cloud when we eventually got there. But what always interested me was where the most challenge was. And generally, the most challenge engineering-wise is not when it's pure software; it's when it has firmware, when it has hardware, and so basically, my whole career, I've been involved in pens, cars, phones, and you name it. Some piece of hardware that interacts with the outside world using Bluetooth or IoT or something like that. So I've always been interested in physical and digital, because just more for the engineering challenge than anything. But then, it's sort of over the last decade where I really started to get more involved in the product side. I realized that actually, again, the most challenge comes from coming into a completely fresh industry. I think one of the things I'm most grateful for is I didn't have to pick an industry and work a whole career in it. you can spend 5, 10 years, whatever, in different industries. And it brings a fresh perspective, a fresh group of people, a fresh set of problems. And so from a product standpoint, I also enjoy coming into an industry, particularly where physical meets digital, which real estate is obviously the ultimate, and looking for things to solve. I started at Census in 2019, just before the pandemic. So the context was very much, everyone says the industry is going to be 30% flex in the next 5 years. It's all happy days. Everyone's going the right direction. Then the pandemic happened. But I'd already, over a year or so, I'd already seen some of the sort of the ideas and the challenges of people sitting in rooms they hadn't booked, having to kick people out. And so, yeah, it was on my desk during lockdown that the first Elumo prototypes were built. And then coming out post-pandemic, then we really saw it, because all of a sudden it was all about, well, why am I coming into the office? I've got coffee and a sit-down desk at home. I don't need to. So then it became about collaboration spaces. Then it became about, these are the most in demand. Why aren't people monetizing them? And then obviously from a product standpoint, that's where, the engineering solution meets the commercial demand, meets the opportunity, the pain point, and figuring out where the solution is to that problem. And yeah, so it's been a sort of probably a 4 or 5 year journey at Illumo, really in anger in the last couple of years. But that involved also a 2-year stretch with Apple, working really closely with them on Wallet. But yeah, I think it's great, people coming into industries with fresh eyes, because I think that's where we get interesting ideas. You're not necessarily just relying on the muscle memory of the way you've always done it. Yeah.
And you bring up muscle memory. It's something we keep seeing, right? A lot of our work with operators where they're like, we don't know what's in our tech stack. We don't know where there's inefficiencies. And then we'll see a process and we're like, why are you doing it this way? Yeah. And they're like, oh, that's because we've always done it that way. And it just reminds me of that experiment with the monkeys, right? First monkey knows to climb up the ladder to get bananas. The second monkey is saying the monkeys are going up the ladder and there's no bananas. And you ask them, why are they going up the ladder? Because that's what everyone always used to do. At this time, you go up the banana to the ladder. Right. I'm definitely a big believer of bringing in, not only at the entry level, because we see a lot of people hiring from hospitality into co-working, hiring from retail, concierge into co-working at kind of the entry customer level, but also at the exec level, at the tech level, bringing people who are from different backgrounds allow us to see things from a new paradigm, right?
Challenge the status quo, 100%.
Yep, and it's just fascinating. I mean, I could definitely dig on about like the career trajectories in and around co-working, but once again, that could be another whole episode. So let's jump over to the next. You did mention a little bit in the previous piece about this idea that spaces are being designed for different use cases, so different action types. We saw a post this week from Scott Hartkopp, who basically describes how ideally a busy office shouldn't just be packed, it should have different focus zones. And he makes this case for creating spaces that are designed for me, individual, single-use, deep focus spaces, and spaces that are designed explicitly for we, group collaboration spaces, breakout sessions, planning, conferencing, training, etc. I love the diagram that you're reading. I think it's definitely something that if you're offering kind of fully spec'd suites, fully managed units, managing the rest of the stack of the building, it's a great way to kind of take a design aspect. Obviously, I'm not an architect. I wouldn't tell you if this is well designed, but I like the idea of different usage zones. And we've definitely seen it with some operators kind of creating a quiet floor, a focus floor, a collaboration floor, because they have the commercial real estate stack to do that. But even within an open plan, breaking away from everyone is hot desking to this is a zone for focus, this is a zone for not. But then again, you have to manage that, right? And I'm sure you've seen this. You've probably worked through a bunch of co-working spaces over the last couple of years. What do you think about this idea of creating different kinds of focus zones?
Yeah, I mean, it intersects really well with how we think about Illumo, because one of the problems we were trying to solve was that we were seeing, when we were talking to operators about these spaces, we were saying, well, why is it always a categorization of it's an office or a meeting room? Why isn't it more, why aren't there 5 categories? Why aren't there, Scott talked about me and we, without managing to infringe a trademark. But yeah, I mean, so we've tried to encourage our operators, especially when thinking about Illumo, to think, one of the reasons they gave was that, well, we know office is secure revenue. We can lock it in, it's leased. Meeting rooms are a bit harder to manage, and we know we're not going to capture 100%. Well, so as soon as you deal with that issue of not capturing revenue for all space, which is what we try to solve with Illumo, then you step back and say, well, what's the best space for everyone to consume? And then it's also about that actually being more dynamic and elastic. So that could vary by day of week, by what type of members you have, by what phase of a project that members are working in. Maybe they're more of a collaboration phase, or maybe they're more in a quiet phase. I think one of the misnomers, certainly my team, we like to spend time at home doing our quiet kind of thinking time, and then we come into the office to collaborate. And then operators ask us, well, why aren't we getting more people into the office as well? Well, you're designing the office spaces just for one use. So we need to make spaces that actually deal with the way anyone needs to work on any given day. But then it becomes about, well, what's a fair way to control that space and ensure the operator isn't giving it away for nothing? I love it. I love the idea of it. I think a lot of operators will immediately have concerns about monetization and revenue capture and so on. But I think there are solutions to that, and we're there to help with that. But ultimately, that's what co-working and flex should be. It should be not only flexible contractually, flexible commercially, flexible and hybrid in terms of when I access it, but the space itself should be flexible, and the type of space should be flexible, so that my team can work quietly or collaboratively, and there be a space for either that's most appropriate, I think. Rather than a classical office or meeting, binary.
And move between the products, because no one signs up for a co-working space for a specific type of product.
Right.
Like the days where I sign up because I want a hot desk, where I sign up because I want to meet, is very, very different now. As different corporations use us, and there was a JLL piece about the elastic portfolio that's also in the newsletter this week as well, in the data section. We're starting to see people sign up for the outcome, right? I want somewhere where my team can work in different zones, in different workloads, different projects, sometimes interchangeable projects with different team members, the space to fit around that. But I wanted to also take on something you mentioned as well, James, and that is that for most software, for most operators, a block of space, a room, has one or more usages, and it can't be dynamically switched between that efficiently. This is an office, it's a 1-person, 2-person, 3-person office. That is what it is. When it's not being rented as that, it's really difficult for us to sell it as a meeting room, or to sell it as a day office, or to switch it into a fractional use office, or any of these other new SKUs that have kind of become fairly popular. Because how do you control that access? How do you make it seamless? And then how do you switch it between those without having to manually go in and kind of recreate resources and systems and solutions like Illumina make it easy to switch, right?
And I had several conversations last week with operators who were talking about, do I put it on these rooms? Do I put Illumina on these rooms? And actually, a lot of the sort of consensus and conclusion was that, well, why wouldn't I put it on all of those spaces? And then if I've got a gap between leases, I can just toggle it bookable. That means I'm capturing more revenue for every square foot, not just the occupied square foot. It also means members aren't frustrated, saying, well, I can't find a meeting room that isn't booked, but there's an empty office sat there for the whole month, and I can't use it. So again, we're coming back to win-win, capture more revenue, keep members happy, retain members because everyone's happy. Having these conversations where they're not just thinking about putting Illumina on forums, but actually put it on all the spaces that could be either. And then you've got this more dynamic space, which can be used more flexibly, which is what I think flex should be.
And that's exactly what flex is being brought into the kind of office buildings to, unbundle the traditional office product. Jerome Chang was also mentioned in this week's newsletter, talking about how real estate owners or office building owners are hitting the fax machine moment, where I'm definitely aging myself now. The fax machine used to scan, copy, send, transcribe, whatever,
make great
written
noises.
documents, and make very interesting noises. Which if you don't know, you don't know. I'm not going to do it here. Google it. But then it got unbundled, right? Email took a piece of it, chat took a piece of it, calls took a piece of it, mobile telephony took a piece of it. And Jerome makes the case that, hey, this is actually happening in office, right? Meeting rooms are being managed by co-working spaces. Co-working flex spec suites, that's being managed by separate companies. And it's kind of being unbundled. And the traditional stack is actually being unbundled. I'll actually take that a level further based on what we just said. The internal co-working space is being unbundled, right? We're no longer selling specific products.
And I kind of think about it, I kind of explode that at the building level as well, because a use case I'm increasingly designing for in the context of Illumo, we're increasingly seeing buildings that are a mix of multifamily, hospitality, retail, residential, flex, meeting rooms. And one of the reasons we're looking at it is there's vertical systems managing the bookings for each of those, but they don't really cross vertical. And the user of the building is saying, well, I'm a resident and I don't want to use the gym, and I want to use a meeting room, and I want to, book a hotel room for my friend, and I'm a hotel resident and I want to use the gym and I want to use a meeting room. And again, the ability to flexibly use that space by any consumer of the building. So you're kind of unbundling the building as well. Every part of that building should be able to be consumed by anyone. That's how they maximize the value from it. But we're kind of set up as industries to think very vertically, whether it's gyms, hotels, flex, whatever. But increasingly, the demand on technology is going to be, well, we don't care. And that's the kind of ultimate consumerization of it. It's everything as a service in my building.
And I had an interview with a Gen Z advisor for firms. And one of the questions that she keeps bringing up to all building operators is they just want everything to be as smooth as an Uber or a Waymo, right? Press a button, be able to access something, walk in, and they don't care about the back end systems, right? All of us have worked in tech for the last, I'm not going to say how long. We've always thought of containerization, verticals, etc. And the amount of times at Syncaroo that I keep getting pulled into calls, I'm like, this is great. Now that we've interconnected our co-working flex space systems, can it also speak to the multifamily that we have upstairs, or the self-storage that we have, or the retail and all these pieces, the back end stuff? I'm like, but like we're starting to finally see that. It is going to be, as you said, the unbundling of buildings into, okay, we just need a layer that connects the entire building, regardless of what we have in each square footage, right down to kind of that resource level. Fascinating couple of years, I'm sure of that. I'm going to definitely have many, many more gray hairs by the end of it, but it's definitely inevitable.
And I just think from a user experience perspective as well, the consumerization, the ability to tap the subway, tap for a sandwich, it creates that expectation, particularly in Gen Z and onwards. I should be able to do that anyway. I'm not going to work for a company that comes in. I think I did a piece on this the other day. I'm not going to come into a company that's going to enforce command and control on me and say, this is your laptop, you shall have this phone, you shall do it this way. So I want to be able to consume anything the way I want to do it in a flexible, easy, familiar way. And that's the benchmark.
I mean, it's also just like from a purely team onboarding or employer onboarding. You want that first day to be like, here's a little bit of swag, here's your introductory document. Here is a key fob for the front entrance. Don't lose these keys, otherwise we have to pay $50 to get a new key. No one wants that anymore, right? So we're definitely getting to that in every part of the building. So I completely agree with you there. And great piece on an approach from Jerome that we shared in the newsletter. So the last thing I really want to dive into you is an amalgamation of news stories, right? And we're going to call it AI chaos. This week we saw a whole bunch of tech news. Once again, if you're after listening in, go and read these pieces. They are very, very interesting. We're going to kind of discuss them in kind of aggregate. So in the tech section today, we saw ChatGPT introducing a tracking pixel, which means they're taking their conversion tracking of their ads and ChatGPT very, very seriously. If you're looking to sell through ChatGPT and through search interfaces, have a look at that. It's not something to be slept on. We saw a CTO or a technical leader share how he spent $500+ a month for multiple months to replace a $49 a month polished piece of software. It's one of the fun things we keep seeing around. Operators are like, hey, I can just vibe code my own inventory system, my own invoicing system to replace what is essentially $60 a month, right? On that note, we also saw, a big announcement or PSA coming out of Lovable. If you've ever used Lovable, it's a vibe coding solution. The entire databases, secret keys, passwords, data usage has all been leaked for anyone who created any projects before November 2025. So just something to keep in mind. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive. Do you own and control the full security of it? No. So just something to keep in mind. I had many, many conversations at GCUC about the opportunities, risks, and threats of vibe coding solutions. It's inevitable. We will get to a point where everyone in the business is creating their own interfaces, is interfacing with your dashboards, apps, etc. But don't just jump in willy-nilly because everyone's talking about it. Hype. Talking about AI agents, we also had OfficeRnD roll out their own AI hub, with their first AI agent being in the sales side, really responding to leads, being able to kind of nurture that and hand it over to a human when necessary. And we then had two more AI topics. I told you, very AI heavy tech section this week. We had Nexudus co-founder Carlos share how to build a Claude skill for handling co-working sales. Another interesting approach to the other side of AI there. And then biggest news probably in AI this week is how Salesforce, one of the most well-known, most well-liked or hated CRM systems on the planet, depending on where you sit in the IT infrastructure, really making it clear that they're going to shift from kind of sales based on or seat-based pricing and dashboards and web interfaces to allowing everything to be controlled through MCPs, APIs, or command line prompts. And this is a very, very big shift for a company that doesn't have to do this now because they have lock-in for at least the next couple of years. But them taking that shift and saying, hey, we're not going to charge you on the amount of team members you have. We're going to charge you on how much your systems interact with the Salesforce brain is something that we need to keep an eye on. It's obviously very, very different to what you were mentioning earlier, James, about going from a consumption-based pricing to a flat fee pricing. A lot of topics there. Which ones caught your eye, James?
So, I mean, for me, the pricing one's a really interesting one because, you know, my team are heavy users of Claude. You know, it powers a lot of our engineering workflow. We love it. It's great. And I think, you know, Anthropic are doing a great job of monetization when it comes to AI. They're actually making money out of it, which is a good start. And they're kind of almost sub-verticalizing. You know, they're building something for engineers. They're building something for co-work. I think now is where it becomes meaningful to end users because rather than just talk of the hype and the technology, we actually start to see the benefit, which is when it appears not as in an investor deck or in a hyped elevator pitch, but actually in real value to end users. So for me, OfficeRnD releasing their AI hub as part of the Flex product fits really well with Growth Hub, which we work very closely already. Obviously, we're all about monetizing meeting space, which in Growth Hub is a big way that OfficeRnD customers do that for non-members. And I think AI Hub is going to only accelerate that. So that fits really well with Illumo. Again, I think the Claude skills, you know, and the Nexudus is also another great move. And again, value being delivered to end customers. The ChatGPT one's interesting because I think there is a company that's looking for a monetization strategy and heavily going down the sort of the consumer route, which I think is a lot more challenging than Anthropic's. So, you know, as I said, I think, you know, Claude's a great sort of product set, and I think it's, you know, doing a really good job. And I think certainly the people in our industry, the people who are sort of looking how to productize it in a meaningful way and stop talking about AI, I think is where our customers should look for that value and not get too hung up on the.
Yes,
I think like any new tech, you know, it'll plateau out. I think we're already seeing that to a certain extent. I think there's a whole nother topic I've been talking about how it impacts engineering, seniors, juniors, the whole evolution of careers and how engineers work now. I think we're going to see the same thing happen with other roles, both within Flex and across. And it's really, I think everyone just needs to think about it as a new tool. It's no different to cloud. It's no different to email. I mean, these were all cutting edge technologies. Again, showing my age. I remember BlackBerry. BlackBerry did this amazing job of sending a small amount of data over the air. Then 3G came along, and like, well, it doesn't matter how inefficient the iPhone is because it just works. So, you know, these things tend to mature, and it's when they become part of products that when we get over the tech hype, I think that the value really comes. And I think we're starting to see the green shoots of that finally, because I think this was going to be the year where people raised a ton of money. A lot of people wasted it, and the success comes from that, and the clarity of where the value is comes from that. I think for me, AI Hub and the Nexudus Core Skills stories were the two that caught my eye.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a shift.
Yeah,
we're at that point now where AI is not mature yet.
No,
it's very much. If you think back to kind of the dot-com bubble, you're not raising money because you have a .com, right? You're raising money because there's an underlying business and product and outcome of having online, right? And even though the .com bubble was a hype and there was like pets.com, we still have Chewy today, right? Diapers.com, we still have Amazon taking a different form. And I think that we're getting to that point now where, as you said, we're seeing people use the technology for an outcome as opposed to just buying an AI tool or thinking that one AI vendor is going to solve all of your problems because it's got AI in it, which is just a fascinating thing to think about. And a conversation that I have umpteenth times a week with operators and executives in the industry where they're just like, can't AI just do everything? And I was like, do you want it to?
And of course, brings it back to data, which we touched on last week. I remember, you know, it puts a big magnifying glass on where's your data? I don't know. How many islands is it in? How many different systems is it in? Well, AI is going to do much for you if it's fragmented across how many systems that don't link up. But there's no integrity or cleanliness to it. So
absolutely agree with that.
It's not going to be a shortcut to anything.
No.
You got to build it on sound foundations.
Yeah, once again, it's a skill you have to build, an organizational. Everyone in your team will have to know how to use new tooling. Going back to your example, you had to train people on using mobile phones, on what they can and can't do with text, WhatsApp, interfaces, BBM, to bring up your BlackBerry reference. So yeah, it's just one of those things we're going to have to train up organizations to think about tooling as opposed to the hype. Actually starting to see it with the, so many AI announcements, and none of them are about funding AI focused co-working spaces. It's starting exactly.
Starting to get value from it. Yeah, which is good.
Yep.
Which is great.
And James, you know that you and I could geek out about this all day or all night if we're playing table tennis. So let's go. Let's kind of get people get back to their day. James, thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking part in this and sharing your insights. Where can people find you next?
So we're at the security event at sunny Birmingham next week in the UK, and then probably from the Flex World point of view, GWA in Denver will be probably the next one, followed by Coworking Europe in November in Paris.
Amazing. Well, we'll hopefully see you at any of those. Thanks again for joining us, James, and everyone have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back in your podcast feed next week. James, take care.
Thanks for having me.